You know, memory, it's a wonderful thing when you have it. What was it the old fella said, that two things go when you get older? One is memory. So I forgot what the other one was. I can remember that. I was driving down. For some reason, it didn't look the same to me. Been a while. So I called back home and I said, Miss Carolyn, would you go on Life 360 and tell me where I'm going? She said, well, you've got a phone. I said, do you want me to kill myself while I'm trying to fool with that phone? I wrote a song one time. It's called I'm Just a Dummy with a Smartphone. You need to hear it. Okay, we're going to do a character study on Moses today. And I have to admit to you that when you first contacted me, I was just doing what I wanted to on it, and I was connecting it up a lot to Christ. Then I was informed that there was going to be another series. I ran into Josh McKibben, and he said he's coming in, I believe, July, that all those fellows were going to be connecting everybody up to Christ. So it was more about his life than it was that. Now, you've got to understand something on my end of it. I tend to connect everything up to Christ. But what I want to do in this lesson is to do a character study. One of the things I've learned about people is this: we're all the same. You can say we're not, but we are. We're born with a certain chemical connection to our parents, called DNA, by the way. And we grow up under certain conditions and certain connections and influences. And every one of us have to go through this process, and we have to make choices. And in the end, those choices that we make will determine the outcome that we're going to have with the Lord. Now, I'm meeting a lot of people, and you better get ready for this, even in the church today, that are becoming Calvinists. And they're teaching the idea that people are born with a predetermined situation. Well, I believe in the fact that God knew me before I got here, just like he did Moses and everybody else. But as far as taking away my choice, I don't believe he's done that. And I believe you have to make a choice. And that choice does not negate the sovereignty of God, the power of God. As a matter of fact, you're going to see, as I enter into this study, one of the first things you need to ask the question about is, why did he send Moses when he sent Moses? Why Moses? And what was the point of Moses leading the children of Israel out of Egypt? And we're going to say, oh, okay, it was to bring about the coming of Messiah. But there was something else, folks. There was something else even deeper than that. And here's the something else. God was announcing to the world, I am in heaven. I exist. I'm greater than any of the pagan gods that you can invent. I'm greater than you. I'm more powerful than you. And I'm going to initiate some laws that you are going to be obedient to. But until you can believe that I exist, those laws will mean nothing to you. And I'm going to tell you something, even in the Church of Christ, when we raise children up that don't see the reality of the throne of God, of Revelation 4 and Revelation 5, they don't see it, they can't feel it, they can't believe that. You can pour the laws on them all you want, it's not going to anchor them. It will not anchor them. So Moses, in order for God to write the laws that become the theocratical foundation for Israel, the children of Israel, boy, there's a difference between the children of Israel and the land of Israel. And today, we've conflated the two. I listen to them in the news. They say Israel, and they think of the land. I think of Israel, I think of the people. And when I think of the people, I realize that's not really the Israel that God was dealing with up until time of the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. So God picks this man, Moses. Now, if you go to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 34, which I'm not going to use that for the lesson. Actually, I'm going to Acts 7. You know I have to go to Acts 7 because that's where the outline is. I'm going to go over, I was taught years ago that if you're going to teach a text, teach it like the Holy Spirit revealed it. Teach it like Jesus Christ taught it. Teach it like inspired men said it. In other words, use their form, because they were motivated by the greatest of all teachers, and that is by the Lord himself. So in the book of Deuteronomy, and it's interesting, Moses dies. You say, well, boy, you got there quick, didn't you? I did, didn't I? Chapter 34, verse 1. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan. Do y'all know where Jericho is? Jericho is not far from Bethabara. And Jericho, when you come in from the east side to the River Jordan, Bethabara is where John the Baptist was baptizing when Christ met him. Christ came in from that side too. Christ was baptized not far from Jericho and crossed the water, went back and began his ministry. Who else crossed there? Well, Joshua later on will cross there. After the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, this is the place that Moses goes to, and he looks across. He sees the land. He's looking at it from the same viewpoint that Joshua will look at it from, the same viewpoint that Jesus will look at it from. And the Bible tells us that the Lord showed him that land, all of Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, as far as the western sea, the south and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, this is the land of which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I've caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. We'll talk about why he didn't. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows his grave to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his natural vigor diminished. The children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses ended. Now Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. So the children of Israel heeded him and did as the Lord commanded Moses. But watch this. But since then, there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. And all the signs and wonders which the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt, before Pharaoh, before all of his servants, and in all of his land, and by all that mighty power and all the great terror which Moses performed in the sight of all Israel, no prophet like him. Well, there will be one greater than him that will come, but no like him there. Now, it's interesting. You read that. Y'all ever watch these movies where they show the death of the hero? And then the whole movie's a flashback. And you go back and start out when he first showed up, and you start out when he began to become aware of his fallibilities. And then finally when the more honorable side rose to the front and his character became that which could serve and do something. I love movies like that. I don't like some of the movies that I see that end so negative and pessimistic, but I love it when I see that particular thing, and I love it here. One of the greatest men in the Old Testament. Did you know his name appears 750 times in the Bible? In over 30 books of the Bible? It's hard to read much of the Bible and not come across Moses. You're going to be touched by his life. Moses, when you look at the demographics of his life, he was an author, a lawgiver, a builder of the tabernacle, a prophet. He was an intercessor. He saved Israel. He was a type of Christ. Yes, he was. And one of the more important things about this Moses, he was a friend to God. Think about that. One of the things that I'm doing a series of studies on the radio right now that's dealing with the Pentateuch, and I'm in the book of Leviticus. And actually, the original title was Wavigra, and which meant the Lord spoke. Go read it. Over and over, every chapter, the Lord spoke to Moses. Every chapter, God spoke to Moses. Boy, I have a Bible. I can read it. God speaks to me through the Word. But wouldn't it be wonderful if God really every day just spoke to you with an audible word. Every day just said, Ray, get up. Time to get up. You got work to do. You got a place to be. You got people to see. I'm going to show you where it's at. I don't doubt that God doesn't think like that with us. But if you go to Exodus chapter 33, Moses, and I want to make a point here. When Moses came to himself and they built the tabernacle, and over 2 million Jews surrounded that tabernacle. Did you know that? Every day when Moses got up and went to the tabernacle, do you know what the people of Israel would do? Listen, let me read it to you. In the book of Exodus 33, verse 7, Moses took his tent, pitched it outside the camp, far from the camp, called it the tabernacle of meeting, and it came to pass that everyone who sought the Lord went out to the tabernacle of meeting, which was outside the camp, which was Moses' tent at that time. So it was whenever Moses went out to the tabernacle, all the people arose. Each man stood at his tent door and watched Moses till he went into the tabernacle. And it came to pass when Moses entered the tabernacle that the pillar of cloud descended and stood at the door of the tabernacle, and the Lord talked with Moses, and all the people saw the pillar of cloud standing at the tabernacle door, and all the people rose and worshiped man, each at his own tent door. Was he important? God said he was. But was he perfect? No, he was not. He suffered. He endured. Really, that was a title for this lesson as we talk about his character. I would talk about the endurance of Moses. That's what I would really be trying to promote to you, because the idea was that he suffered much to accomplish the great task that God had given. He had opposition from enemies, from friends, from his household. He was misunderstood, not appreciated. He was criticized. Sometimes there was no evident progress in the people he was speaking to, but he endured. Why? What was his secret? Well, I will contend his secret is the same secret that is at your disposal today. Faith. Over in the book of Hebrews, what does the Bible tell us in Hebrews chapter 11? What does it tell us in verse 27? By faith, he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured, as seeing him who is what? Invisible. See, older I get, the more the veneer falls away. The more the facade of physical security ends itself. And I'm not talking about land and house and money. You can have that, but you're not going to have it long. You will dissolve. And if you don't believe that there is a God on the throne, if you don't have faith in that reality, then whatever your journey is, whatever wanderings you're going to go through, whatever God has called you to do, it's going to be impossible for you to do it. Because there are so many weights that encumber us, so many things that can hold us and draw us back. But this man was a friend that God spoke to directly. Now, go over to Acts 7 for just a minute. We're going to read some verses from Stephen. And in Acts 7, as Stephen talked about these things, he begins in verse 20. And he gives us what will be the outline for the lesson. At this time, Moses was born and was well-pleasing to God. And he was brought up in his father's house for 3 months. We'll talk about how that happened. But when he was set out, Pharaoh's daughter took him away and brought him up as her own son. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds. Now, when he was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. Now we'll stop right there for just a minute. The first 40 years of Moses' life, what are the conditions of his early environment? Well, we know that a prophecy had been given way back in the book of Genesis, the last chapter. Should you want to read it, mark it down. And in Genesis chapter 50, when Joseph and Israel all had gone down into Egypt, and the Bible tells us the death of Joseph was imminent in Genesis 50, verse 22. So Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household. And Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the third generation. The children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were also brought up on Joseph's knees. By the way, it is wonderful to see your children and your children's children. I'm on great-grandchildren now. And if you don't want to see somebody brag, don't you ask me about it, because I will brag. And Joseph said to his brethren, I am dying, but God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land to the land of which we swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. He had made an earlier prophecy, even to Abraham. Then Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, and he said, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry my bones from there. And Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. Now, what's he saying? They were going to Egypt, but he said, God will not forget you, and you're going to come back. Now, you know, there were actually two prophecies. One was biblical, which I buy. Totally, I read that. And that had to do with Moses coming and so forth. Even the Egyptians had a prophecy, because in the 400 plus years of the history of the Jewish people there, they began to fear those people tremendously. This is one of the conditions that began to bring about a really bad treatment of the Jews. Now, I would that you would read Exodus 1. Part of this you're going to have to read for yourself, please, because we don't have time. But it was a great time of distress. The Bible said that a Pharaoh arose that knew not Joseph. Forgot what Joseph had done for them, how he basically saved the nation, as it were, in the days of the famine. Forgot it. Had no more contact. But here was the problem. The children of Israel, living in the land of Goshen, they were growing and growing and growing. Israel had been there for 400 years. They went from 70 souls to millions of people. Verse 7 of Exodus 1, they were mighty in the land. What does that mean, they were mighty in the land? Well, let's see. Prosperous. They worked hard. Even before they were slaves, they had come out of Egypt with quite a few things. When they leave, they're going to be very prosperous people. But when they get here, they work hard. Industrious people. One of the signs of people that work hard is, number one, they're strong. Number two, they can endure. Number three, it's hard. It's hard to get them down. They're too busy. I've heard people say, I'm too busy to die. And I understand that, because I think it's important. You know, today's a great day. It's a lazy day for me, in a way, but tomorrow is a boom day. Tomorrow there will be YouTube programs. There will be 3 church services. Plus, I've got to meet some people in the evening. Monday, I'm going to be preaching in another meeting. Tuesday, hey, I get to relax a little bit. Wednesday, I'll be at Waterview. Thursday, I'll be at a place called Fairview. Finally, when it gets to Friday of next week, I might be able to take my wife out and get her a chicken dinner. That'd be nice. But I'm telling you, work is not a bad thing. But the problem was, as people saw the prosperity of these people, they feared them. They were afraid, hey, they're mighty, they're strong. If our enemies come against us, well, they'll side up with them and hurt us. So what did they do? You read it, didn't you? Now we're getting the conditions that Moses grew up in. They set taskmasters all over the people. And what did they do? Folks, they had them digging channels. Where does that say that in the Bible? You need to read Josephus. You need to read Flavius Josephus, who at one time was a Jewish general and a priest who led the children of Israel against the Romans, trying to defeat them, but was defeated. And now he really wasn't converted into the Roman world, but he became a Roman. He became a historian. And he describes a lot of these things. Building the cities of Ramses, and even working on pyramids and channeling the Nile River so they could do irrigation. They made them work. But here's what happened. As they worked and as they developed, listen now, they got stronger. They learned the arts of mechanics. They learned how to do things. They become even more of a threat to the people of Egypt. So here Moses is going to be born in a time when the Pharaoh then that knew not Joseph said in his heart, We've got to stop the males, because they'll be the ones that will war against us if they go to war, especially if Ethiopia comes against us, because the world was in an issue like we are today. Serious things were happening. So they began to kill the firstborn. Can you imagine that? Well, we killed both sides. Our country kills both sides. Why? Convenience? Social manipulation? Fear? Fear of something. I believe we'll be judged for that someday. They distrusted their loyalty, but the adversity of that time period had tempered their strength. They were powerful people, so they initiated the genocidal persecution. They ordered the midwives to kill the male children. Midwives didn't want to do it. And they tried to save them. Well, every time we could get there, those ladies were so strong, they'd have their babies early. Read Exodus 1 and 2, please. Now, you're going to be born into that world. But there was some joy in it. I mean, the Nile River went by. How many of y'all been raised up on a river? I have. I was born in Louisville on the Ohio River up there. I know what it's like to walk down the banks of a river and feel the mud between your toes. Moses would have learned that later on in his life. But in his early days, ladies and gentlemen, he was brought up in this world, and that river was going to be maybe his death sentence, because when he was born, the Bible tells us he was a beautiful child, a special child, a precious child, a gift from God. He was fair. Let's read. Look what it said. At this time Moses was born, verse 20, well-pleasing, brought up in his father's house for 3 months. Well, when he got 3 months old, and I don't know about you, but I don't know how you would hide a 3-month-old baby. One of my friends, they just had a little baby, said, we was hoping for one that would sleep in the night, but guess what? It don't. It stays awake, and it keeps us awake, and it makes a lot of noise. 3 months come, it's time now. What's going to happen? Soldiers are moving around looking for a baby to destroy. We're just talking about where Moses was born, the kind of world he grew up in, a world that was so dangerous to him. So mama makes a little box, covers it in pitch so the water can't go through the reeds, puts the baby in it, sets it in the bush, the rushes of the Nile River, and she goes home grieving, and the daughter Miriam, read the text. She stays to see what would happen to the child. And here comes this lady down. Now, who is this lady? The Bible says that she's the daughter of the Pharaoh. I did a little research on that one time, and I don't know exactly. Some people say her name was Thermuthis, the daughter of Setai the first, or Ramses the second, or Amenhotep. Some call her Queen Hatshepsut. Some say her name was Bithia. I don't know what her name was. All I know this: she had a mother's instinct. And when she saw this child that should not be allowed to live by the decree of her father, she wasn't going to have it. Now I'm going to say that to make a point. The character of a person is affected a lot, and even your safety, by people around you. I can look back in my life and see faces of people that weren't even Christians that had great impact on my life. One time we were very poor. One time there was a little barn next to us, and we were playing in the hay. I put hay up. I know how it is, but these were hay bales, and we were building castles in the barn, playing King of the Mountain, tearing hay up. Years later, this old farmer come up to me, and he said, one day we come down there and we heard y'all laughing and playing and jumping. And said, one of the men that worked for me walked down and he said, Mr. Coulter, said, there's a bunch of kids in there tearing your hay up. He said, what are they doing? He said, they built hay castles and they're jumping around. And he said, oh, I know those kids. He said, that's probably the only time they really have anything to play with. He said, you want me to go run them out? He said, don't you dare say a word to them. You let them play. You let them enjoy that. See, he could have turned us into people that hated farmers, but he didn't. I have been touched in my life by so many people, and here Moses goes down, and I believe God's providence is in this, and here comes this woman, whoever she is, and she sees that babe, and she does not want that baby to die. But you got to feed the baby. Now there's all kinds of interesting statements made by that by other writers, even Josephus, that Moses would not have anybody but his mother feed him. So Miriam, his older sister, said, hey, do you need somebody to feed the baby? Yes. Don't you love this? So she go gets his mother, and she feeds the baby. I love that. I believe that God does things like that all the time. And Amram and Jochebed, they were people of faith and courage. Matter of fact, the Bible says that by faith they would not abide in what was going on. And I'm going to make a point there too. When you're raised up in a home and your character is affected by two people that love God. Now, they're not going to church to be seen. They're not going to church, just to set some sort of image in the minds of people. I was telling somebody I'm working on a sermon about being good to your family. A lot of us will be good to a stranger. That's image management. You know that, right? But then sometimes go home and be mean to our wives and our children. And that's character revealing. But if you grow up in a home where your mom and your dad love the Lord and love you, your character is going to be greatly affected by that in a positive way. Maybe you won't get it right then, but I'll tell you something. The memories of that will always come back. My sons still say this. There were things I knew my daddy would get me if I did. If I was going to do it, I was going to have to hide. But I didn't ever want him to find it out. And I would talk to them and I'd say, that was the very thing I feared for you, is that you'd have to hide. I wanted my kids to talk to me and tell me what their problems were and understand, if they could not disagree with me, how are they going to disagree with the world when the world comes at them? You tell me how they're going to do it. They had to be able to make their statement, you see. So you've got parents that were a couple of faith and courage, and in face of death, they preserved him, and they were able to raise them between them and Pharaoh's daughter. And here he is, he was instilled through them with the belief in the one true living God, Jehovah, and the pagan world was never able to destroy that. Culture does not have to destroy the souls of our own children if we love them, believe in God, and stand for the truth. It doesn't have to do it. So from birth to 40, that's the world he grew up in. Now he's 40 years old, the text tells us. The Bible said in verse 21, when he was set out, Pharaoh's daughter took him away, brought him up as her own son. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds. And when he was 40, it came to his heart to go visit his brethren and children of Israel. Now, coming of age is that. It's not, well, I've grown up and now I can drive my car. Like a fellow said, my son came to me the other day and he said, Daddy, he said, let me tell you something. He said, one of these days, he said, I'm going to help you buy the food around here, and I'm going to help you pay for your house, and I'm going to do a lot of things for you. He said, it broke my heart. He said, I went home and cried because, my son's 33. Think on that. How old were you when you left home? I was 18. Nobody run me off either. I wanted my own home. I wanted my wife. I married her. I wanted to take care of my family. I wanted to be my own person in church. I wanted my place. Not house, I'm talking about place. I was like David. The Bible says in Acts 13, when he served his generation, he was gathered to the fathers. I want to serve my generation, all of it, to the best that I can. Well, Moses now, in the midst of all of this conflicting information, Jehovah, the creator of the universe, and all these other gods that the Egyptians had, they had Ra and Osiris and Isis and Horus and Anubis, Hapi, all of these Moses will defeat by the hand of God with the 10 plagues. God will say, I exist and I'm greater than anything you can imagine on the river Nile. And Moses is going to be the lightning rod and the focus point of that revelation to the world. Now sometimes we get lost and we say, well, look at all those laws. Look at all the laws beginning in Exodus 20 and all. The 10 Commandments and all the addendums and all the rites of sacrifice and purification. Look at all that. It means nothing unless there's a God in heaven. By the way, same token, we can come in here till we turn blue in the face. But if we don't believe there's a God in heaven and we don't believe he sent his word to us and his Christ to us, it does us no good. Matter of fact, Jesus pretty clear. He said, you know, if I'm not the risen Messiah, then you of all people, you are most miserable and pitiful. So Moses says, what am I going to do? My people, here is a learned man, a mighty man, kind of like Apollos. He's mighty in word and deed. He's respected. He's grown. He's educated in astrology and mathematics and astronomy and medicine and the sciences of that world. You know what Josephus said about it? Josephus said, about that time, Ethiopia made war against Egypt and was winning the war. And Moses was so connected both to the Jewish people and to the Egyptian people. Even some were whispering, he may be the next Pharaoh. Now listen. So they said, we want you to lead the army against the Ethiopians. Now there was a contingency of people in Egypt that wanted Moses dead because they knew he'd be too influential and would lean toward the Jewish people. They knew that. So they wanted him dead. Send him out to war. Hey, didn't they get that from David when he sent the fellow out? You know, he had taken his wife and he sent him out in war, said let him get killed in war. He could be a hero in the war and he'll be dead and I'll be covered. But poor old Moses, they were going to send him out. But guess what? Moses won the war. The whole crowd won. History says that. So he comes back and now he's more powerful than ever. So here he is at the top of his game, 40 years old. But he went to see the children of Israel, and he saw one of them suffer wrong, so he defended him, and he avenged him, and he struck him down. He killed him. What's he thinking with? Head or heart? How about emotions? We'll do so many things when we get angry, won't we? You know, you can be very mature physically and intellectually, and even socially, but not emotionally. And he responds in a way that's so destructive to his life. He takes this life. But notice verse 25. He supposed that his brethren would have understood that God would deliver them by his hand. But they did not understand. They'll appreciate me, and they did not appreciate him. They will receive me, and they did not receive him. Now I'm going to have to break my rhythm here. What did Christ do when he came? He came to his own. And his own what? Didn't want him. Matter of fact, I've even seen that play out in preaching. Sometimes preachers can't preach where they grew up. A prophet is not without honor except in his own country. Well, I preach about 100 miles south of where I grew up. I can go back now, but I don't want to. I want to stay where I'm at. But sometimes you don't receive respect among the very people that watched you grow up. And you have to deal with that. And that's a hard thing to deal with, because a lot of times what you want to do is start out with the people have known you. And here he was. You look at him, he's blessed in everything. But now he lets emotions take over. But his own will not receive him. They didn't understand. The next day he appeared to two of them as they were fighting and tried to reconcile them, said, "Men, you are brethren, why do you wrong one another?" But he who did his neighbor wrong pushed him away and said, "Who made you ruler and judge over us?" You do realize that is a very powerful thought, because it's brought up again in Acts 7. Why was Jesus rejected? Because he was to be a what? A ruler and a what? And a judge. Who made you ruler over us? Well, I can only imagine the conflict in the mind of this man, blessed in all things, physical and mental attributes. But he had to learn that God looks upon the heart. He had to learn that those actions in and of themselves will not help you. And what happened to him? Moses had to leave where he was at. Now this, to me, is hard. Amram, Jochebed, Miriam, Aaron, his adopted mother, maybe even Pharaoh himself. Although Pharaoh's going to have to attack him now because he did that. Now he's a man that has to run away. And the scripture tells us what he does. Then at this saying, Moses fled in verse 29. He's a fugitive. Became a dweller in the land of Midian, where he had two sons. He met Jethro. A new life started. And I think in that time period that he was there, it's like me and like you. And maybe young people would understand us older folks better if we'd explain this to them. For my first 40 years, I thought I knew it all. I haven't gone through the second 40 yet. Getting closer. But I learned I didn't know it all. And I learned I didn't even know a lot of the right questions to begin pursuing. I learned that sometimes I did better sitting in a field at my house with an old broken down pony and a Great Pyrenees dog, and I'd be sitting on a yellow bucket thinking about sermons and thinking about the church, thinking about brethren, thinking about my soul, thinking about the doctrine of Christ. And it was in those places, praying in those fields, that I began to learn more about what I need to do as a preacher of the gospel. Not sitting at big breakfasts with a bunch of my preaching brethren. And not that I oppose that. But sometimes those discussions turned very, very worldly. Not immoral, but just talking about things, way to entrap opponents and that kind of thing. No. I will tell you something. He goes out there, he becomes a father, but I think something began to really develop in him as he thought, separated from family in that place, that began to really affect his character. He began to think about, who do I serve? Look, go back to Hebrews 11 for just a minute. The Bible says in verse 23, by faith Moses, when he was born, and they talked about his parents, was hidden 3 months by his parents. And they saw he was a beautiful child, and they were not afraid of the king's command. By faith, here in the Hall of Fame of Faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in heaven, or in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king again, but he endured as seeing him who's invisible. And by faith he later on will receive the words that God will give him to establish the new religion and the new laws of Israel. But the first thing that had to happen was faith. Did not Paul tell Timothy in 2 Timothy 1, he said, take what you've been taught, Timothy, and commit it to who? Faithful men, or the word there, anthropos, men and women. Sometimes we'll try to put people up to teaching classes, leading, singing, hoping it'll make them faithful. No, they need to be faithful when they get up there. They need to believe in the Lord and love the Lord and do it for the Lord when they get up there. It shows. You just don't do it for the people. You do it for the Lord. And this change came over Moses, this faith. And he remembered the prophesied promise in Genesis 50. He remembered what his mother probably had told him and his father had told him, that Joseph told us 400 plus years ago, you're going to be relieved from this place. And Moses wanted to be a part of that. No, he didn't. Yes, he did. Why do you think I said it like that? He knew the prophecies, but he didn't know he was the one picked until the burning what? In Exodus 3. Burning bush. You sang a song. Put your shoes up, for this is holy ground, right? So what's God saying? Look at this. I suspended all the laws of this world, and I kept that bush from burning up. The voice comes out. You're going to go deliver the information. Now he knows. Oh, he knows. But what does he do? Tell me what he did. He made excuses like we all do. Like we all do. I can't. Don't have time. Well, I'm not trying to put you down. I'm trying to tell you, Moses is a man of great character, but he still had that flaw just like we do. And I would think in my mind that this would lead us to the idea that when faith comes, first of all, it's always a decision of pain. Did you know that? You don't think it isn't? If you believe there is a God in heaven, and you're going to have to face him one day, you believe that he sent his son, you're going to have to face that. If you're not a Christian, and you begin to believe, you have to believe I'm wrong, and anybody like me is wrong, and I got to fix things. I've got to change the way I'm living. I've got to follow the Lord and do it with a sincerity of heart. It's a decision of pain. He loved Pharaoh's daughter, I'm sure. And there was a personal sacrifice of being a prominent leader of Israel. And honor and fame and fortune was gone. What did he exchange it for? Suffering. Ill treatment and reproach. You don't think that takes a strong man or woman? You see, the picture I'm trying to paint of Moses is, yes, a man. He was told one time, speak to the rock. And he did. And he was told again, speak to the rock. And he didn't. Why did he not the second time? I think he was fed up with the people. You ever been fed up with somebody who lost your cool? And said things you knew you was going to have to take back? Apologize for it? That didn't mean you weren't a person of character. Like Moses, you have those moments. Character, though, is what you continue to do with it. I'll show you a little something. Proverbs 24 talks about a man that's wicked falls and he lays there to his destruction. He don't get up. What does a righteous man do if he falls? 7 times. What does the scripture say he does 7 times? Gets up. If you lay there, can you fall anymore? Nope. Just lay down on the floor and try to fall. Can't do it. Now I can fall from here, but if I hit that floor and don't get up, I can't fall anymore. So there's a lot of people, they don't fall anymore because they're down. They won't get up. I promise you. Why does the righteous man fall? Because he got up. He kept getting up. And the Bible warns you that there's going to be times, even though you're a person of character, that you're going to fall. Unless you believe that mess people are teaching. But once you're saved, you're always saved. You don't have to worry about it. You better read Hebrews 6, by the way. That would really answer that, I think. So, how did he make that decision? He saw sin's short-term effect. 70 and 10, David had said. Life is a vapor, James said. The Lord comes back at an unexpected time. He saw death as a great equalizer. Character is humbled. I think Moses was too. And he wanted treasure in heaven, not treasures of Egypt. We baptized a lot of people last year. But several of those folks were dying. Well, I know some of my brethren says, well, should you have baptized them? Yes. Oh, yeah. Because sometimes it's not until the rug is jerked totally out from under you that you know your last option is this. This is it. And that's when you'll listen. I won't tell you the story about one man. Remind me a lot of Moses. But his name was Gene. His last name is Willits. I don't mind to tell it to you. Strong man. Tough man. Man's man. Everybody in our county, number one, you don't mess with Gene. But number two, you want him as your friend. Because if you were down, he is going to help you. But he wasn't a Christian. He got cancer. Trying to die. Wife called me up and said, would you come over and talk to me? She's not a Christian either. I try to live so that people believe that you've got something to say, especially when they need you, really need you. I go over there, 2 other preachers there. No, not Church of Christ. And boy, they're all waving their hands and jumping around and going to heal him, can't heal him, going to save him, can't save him. Finally, one of them gets so excited, he goes, gets a glass of water from the kitchen and pours it on the man's head and said, you're saved. Well, here I am. So what do? You think I want to have a big fight at the foot of Gene's bed? No, I don't have a fight at the foot of Gene's bed. I did take that preacher in the kitchen. What did you just do? What was the point of that? What's wrong with you? Well, we got to do something. I said, I'd rather take chances on doing nothing than pouring water on top of his head. So as soon as they left, I went back and I talked to the guy's wife and I said, listen, is your husband an honest man? She said, yes. I said, here's what you do. I'm leaving. But I want you to take these verses from the book of Acts. And I went through the conversion verses. And read it to him. Just read it to him. He'll trust your voice. We had done sermon stomped him in that room. That's what we had done. So she read to him that night. Because he was in pain. Next morning, phone rang. Can you come over? Yeah. I get there. Everybody in there was like 6'6". They were the tallest bunch of men I've ever seen all in one room. Said he wants to be baptized for the remission of his sins. Okay. Took him to the Maribone Creek. Put him in a wheelchair. The men carried him. Put him in a wheelchair, pushed him out in that creek. We get out there about that deep. And I motioned to his grandson. I said, would you come out here too? He'd come out. He's about 12, 13. I said, now will you hold the handles of this wheelchair? Yes, sir. I told the big men on either side, I said, now get ready. And then I said, Gene, and there was 35, 40 people there. Why are we here? He said, I'm here because I believe in Jesus as the Son of God, and I want to be baptized for the remission of my sins. So fellas put him under. And I said, little man, hang on. You're going to help baptize your grandpa. Down to go. Up he comes. He goes up on that bank, happy, and dies the next day. People of character will always accept God's will and do. In the end, they'll do the right thing. Now, the problem that we have with Moses, and what throws everybody off, of course, Moses, I'm not going to go through all of it. Moses, for 40 years, had to do what? Had to escort Israel from Mount Sinai 2 years, 38 years in the wilderness of Kadesh Barnea, dealing with a people that were fickle, materialistic, fearful, got fed up, struck the rock, lost his ability to go to the land of Canaan. Now, he did not lose his soul. How do I know that? Who appeared with Elijah when Jesus was transfigured and talked about the impending death that Christ was going to go through? Who was there when divinity burst forth in brilliant light from our Christ? Moses. But he didn't get to go to the land of Canaan. What's that tell you? Sometimes people like Moses that endure and have great character will make decisions that they can never get away from till their dying day. They will have consequences they have to carry. Not their soul being lost, but what they have to carry through life because of what they did. Moses died. But the story didn't end. Even later, in the latter part of your Bible, remember 750 times his name come up, at least in Scripture. 30 books. But one of the most enigmatic passages on Moses is in the book of Jude. Very interesting. What about this? When Jude was talking about the apostate mind that speaks evil of God and of God's men and women, and he said in verse 8, only one chapter, these dreamers defile the flesh, reject authority, speak evil of dignitaries. Yet Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil, can you imagine that? Michael the archangel, into it with Satan. Over what? Disputed about the body of Moses. Dared not bring against him, that is the devil, a reviling accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke you. Now I thought, what about the body of Moses? Over there in Deuteronomy, he said nobody knew where he was buried, but evidently Michael and the devil might have had some idea. So why would the devil want the body of Moses? I don't really know. Other than, people are awful bad to dig stuff up and find a bone here, artifact there, and say, oh, we got to worship that now. Can you imagine if you had the body of Moses and you were the devil, how you could have led the people of Israel back toward the law of Moses with that, or to the very first commandment or the first covenant? But what I love is Michael's thing. And I think Michael's a strong angel, but get this, he dared not revile Satan. We're daredevils, aren't we? We'll revile. I've seen political reviling, religious reviling. I've seen reviling among the brethren. We never learned that lesson. Because people of character are not into name calling and labels. They meet the person eyeball to eyeball and talk to them. Ooh, I don't think I did bad as far as staying away from Jesus and that. What do y'all think? Can you imagine how long you'd be here if you let me talk about Jesus a little bit connected to Moses? You'd be here a while. I think that Moses is a great. I don't like the movie portrayals that I see of him. It just amazes me what they tend to try to do. And you know why? Because I don't think they emphasize enough his power and his courage, and God's power and God's courage. And I think that if they really understood the truth, they would realize that the movies they make pale into insignificance compared to what Moses really went through at the Red Sea. Have you ever heard the story about the little boy that come home from Bible class and said, oh, Mom and Daddy, we studied about Israel crossing the Red Sea, And Moses standing there, but actually said, our teacher said that what he did, he took a laptop. By the way, I had a t-shirt I was going to wear down here, but it's too big. And it said, Moses is the first person that tapped in with his tablet to the cloud and brought back a message that man needed to hear. But anyway, he said, he tapped in on his tablet and said a light beam went across the water. All the children of Israel marched across the water. And then when the Egyptians tried to come across, he pressed the button, delete, and they all fell in the water. And his daddy said, are you sure that's what she taught you? No. Said she didn't say that, but said, if I told you the truth, you'd never believe it. That's the point. Those people lived through things that's almost incredulous. But these things are written. These are things that they received in type and shadow. And we live in the time of the great revelation of the Messiah. What kind of people should we be? Powerful. Strong. Undaunted. Faithful. Courageous. But not daredevils. Kind. When the Lord says speak, don't strike. You might strike, suffer consequences for being identified as a brawler. Now I'm going to close with this. Am I supposed to give an invitation? Yeah. Okay. A man one time told me this. He was a preacher. He said there's two kinds of preachers. He said one kind of preacher is a fighter. They're fighting about everything. Can't preach a sermon unless they're fighting about something. The other kind's a builder. He said, I've been a fighter all my life. Never built anything. He said, preacher, be a builder. He said, you may have to fight, but your first goal is to build. Build. Now, are you a Christian? Probably all of you are. So I'm going to ask a question I ask at home every Sunday just about to the brethren. Is everything okay with you? Is there anything in your life right now that's weighing you down, pulling you down, hurting you? Is it something that prayer would help? Or just somebody to listen? Let us do that. Leave here knowing you've got a family and they care about you. Leave here knowing you've got a Lord who will forgive you, but number one, not only that, he'll give you strength. Will you think about this? Let's stand up and sing.